So the first question from Randeep Gandhi is, what does Lidar stand for?
Oh, you've got me there. It's I'd have to Google it because it's not something that you remember very easily. It's yeah, you've it's probably not my smartest move on knowing that. It's
okay.
yeah, I'll come back to you.
We'll come back to it. Google it later while I'm presenting, and then we can come back to that. So the next
light detection and ranging. There you go. Light detection and ranging.
Excellent.
But basically, it's using radar and laser.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. Okay, so then the next question from Joe West is, what was the typical cost of one of these LiDAR modules?
So the typical cost for the LiDAR modules, you'd need to speak to somebody from the Marsden Group. What we've done in Seadrill is we've basically put ourselves in a position where we've helped the Marsden Group with their development. We've given them access to the rig, so we've guaranteed our first 12 units. I would suggest that if you are interested in pricing this, I would go and speak. I can pass on the details of somebody at the Marsden Group, or if you go on their LinkedIn, you'll be able to get in touch with someone. It would depend. The actual final cost would depend on the architecture that you would need in the back, and also the number of actual units that you would require for your drill floor. But they're actually, the Marsden Group is a company that works in oil and gas, but also it's looking to put this into warehouses and various other industries. They've also been speaking to mining companies as well about this.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, just to add to that, we're actually going to do a survey after the webinar, and one of the questions is whether you're interested in this and whether they would want to contact. So if you answer yes to that question, we'll just supply your contact details to them. Then the next question from Randeep. So what is the delivery time for such a unit? How long does it take to between ordering and installation?
So I can tell you at the moment that everything that would be made, all the units that would be made, are made in-house in the company. They have all the equipment required to put the hardware together. But again, like anything, it's going to depend upon demand and interest from other companies. I don't think it's going to be excessively long. I think it's pretty readily available. It's more about the availability of the aluminium to do the boxes and the actual LiDAR pucks themselves. But again, that would be one that you would have to speak to the Marsden Group. I'm not a salesperson for LiDAR. I'm just here to tell you the story about the journey that we're kind of on.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question from Joe West. So what are the adaptive SMS safety management system measures in place to respond to the dynamic changes in the Redzone?
What are the adaptive SMS measures in place to respond to the dynamic? So I think it's how we pick this up and how we manage this, how our drill crews are able to manage this. You know, if we're changing the Redzone that's being used, it's very important that this is communicated to all the guys on the rig. But to be honest, our rig crews, and for example, they're going to know that things are changing, and they're going to know based on how we operate and how we manage things as a company, as where they're supposed to be and how they're supposed to maneuver around that. For example, if we go from a tripping to a casing operation, they know that, you know, when we're casing, this is how we operate, and when we're tripping, this is how we're operating. But it's just making sure that everybody else knows that. And also when we're doing things like casing, we have a lot of third parties on board the rig, and it's making sure that our crews are educating these third parties as well as to how we expect them to work and how we expect these operations to be done. And there's also things within the LiDAR itself that it can recognize, you know, different colors of coveralls, and it can recognize whether, you know, for example, somebody's wearing Seadrill coveralls or somebody's wearing another coverall. And one of the other things that we've looked at as well is that it can recognize different colors. So although nobody has to wear anything, we may decide that, you know, if when we're tripping and we're using manual slips, if somebody's going into the Redzone to pull those slips, that we say that, okay, well, they would wear a different coloured hat, so the system would automatically pick up on that and understand that those people are allowed in the Redzone at this particular time in order to do that. But anybody else, it should be flagged that they're in the wrong place.
All right. Okay, so question from Brett Reed. Would this application be adaptable to land rigs with respect to red zones around
Yeah,
catwalks and rig?
100%. This is not just for the offshore industry. This would work for any industry. As I say, it's big. Well, say we, the Marsden Group are looking at this for things like factories and for warehouses. We picked it up because we could see that there was definitely something here for using on a rig floor, but that rig floor doesn't matter whether it be floating or whether it be on land. I think actually you would probably find that you'll be able to cover much more space using like much less units. So we say 3 for a drill ship. I would imagine you could use 1 or 2 for a land rig. And one of the places where we look, we're trying to get in touch with anyone. If anybody here knows anyone who can help us, we were trying to find if there was anywhere where we could just put one on just a test rig somewhere and just leave it filming, not filming, but recording, just so we can gather data. Because as I said before, the more data we have, the better our models are.
Great, yeah. Okay, so Virgilio, however, simply putting those hardware and technologies together does not make a good system for end users to use. Is human factor considered in it?
100%. And what we're not looking to do is use technology to solve a problem. We know that we have to have the management systems in place behind that. And we know that we have to work with the right people when implementing this. And also by putting new technology out, absolutely the second you do that, human factors has got to be, at the forefront of everybody's mind. So that all has to be backed in before we would even consider putting this on one of our rigs. And I think there's a question a little bit lower down where it talks about, is this being used at the moment? So we have this. We had this in trial on one of our drill ships just for a couple of weeks, gathering data, and we are going out to another drill ship. It's actually going out tomorrow now, and it's going to just sit there and record data for a while. Now, this is not a working drill ship, but we're putting it. We're going to run some scenarios and record that and gather more and more information. And then we will look. We don't want to put it on a working drill ship until we have the full ATEX compliancy, which, as I said earlier, is due in January. No, sorry, due Q1. So it's January, February time.
All right. Does it give you cumulative hours of personnel working in the red zone, for example, tripping in?
No, but I suppose it could do, but we would get that from other systems that we have.
Yeah. Okay, Virgilio says, looks like this will need some education. So to what extent do you think this will be disruptive?
I think anything new needs education. I don't think we expect that if you go and, the day that we changed from Kellys to top drives, that took a huge amount of education. And this is about, what we try to do and what we've always tried to do in this industry is improve and get better. And we know that the most important thing is looking after our people. And of course, anytime we put new technology on board a rig, it's going to require education. And we absolutely recognize that. And we wouldn't put this on a rig without that.
All right, excellent. Well, the questions are coming in faster than we can answer them, so that's really great. We have some good participation. Okay, Guido, from an operator perspective, this is a very interesting application. I'm wondering how what the system learns gets sent back to the people on the floor, and for them to learn from that.
So. At the moment, the way that we expect for this to be done would be that it would be the driller who would be receiving the first information. So he's going to be alerted if somebody's in an area that we can class as a red zone, and he needs to be made aware of that. Now, from my experience of working as a roughneck, I can tell you that the driller will communicate very, very quickly to the roughneck who's in the red zone that he is in the red zone, or maybe it's not a roughneck, but and he needs to move. That's kind of the start, and that'll get better and better and better. But also, the more this happens, and the more that the guys who are working on the drill floor are made aware that people know where they are, and they need to be more aware of where they are. And the driller, if they do walk into a red zone, that he will point that out. People learn, and people, will adapt how they operate as well. And I don't think anybody goes into a red zone. Nobody goes into a red zone on purpose, and certainly not to. No one wants to put themselves in danger. It's just being more and more aware that these systems are out there, and they're just trying to help. We're just trying to keep people safer. We're trying to make sure that everybody goes home from their hitch to their families safe and well.
Excellent. All right. Okay, we're slowly coming towards the end of the session. I don't think we can answer everything, but what I suggest, Richard, is while I do the next presentation, you work through these answers and just answer them in text. But we have time for 2 more questions. Let's see what. So the question whether it's live. No, it's not live yet. But the question here from Clive is, will NOV be involved for ACS interface, or does Marston do the needful?
I very much hope that NOV would be involved. I wouldn't want to go and change this without their involvement. And I think it's important that if this solution is as good as we believe it's going to be, I think it's important that everybody buys into this as well, because we're all after the same goal. And we've presented this, and NOV have certainly been very interested in what we've done, and also I've presented this. I've told MH Worth about this and presented kind of our way forward with this as well, and I think there's other applications for this where the same technology can be used and can be used to benefit all operations. So we're very hopeful that people are going to be encourage the further development of this, and also be welcoming to this new technology that could really help how we operate.
Yep. Okay, so I think one final question from Vito, but as mentioned, Richard will will go through all the questions and answer them in text later. So Vito asks, there are a few other alternatives in the industry, also in testing phase, like using RFID, which seems to cost less than Lidar. What would Lidar offer better in terms of feasibility to implement? So Richard, we discussed as well, this is another company that does analysis based on camera footage. What are your thoughts on that?
I think this is this is such an important instance that we're going after, and such an important topic that I think it's important that we try everything, because what works for one may not work for another. We've looked at I think we've looked at video, which we think has got great application. We've also looked at RFID on some of our rigs as well. We actually installed an RFID solution on one of our rigs. However, what we found is that for the RFID system, that it wasn't. I think I wasn't involved in this directly, but from what I remember, the issue was you have to install a lot of hardware, and you actually create more things that can drop out of the derrick because of the aerials and everything that you need. But also, it's how exact do we need to be, and is RFID the best for, it has to triangulate the exact location of someone and then kind of pick up on people moving. Now, from what I remember, it can do that, but it's not as good as what we've seen from the results from the early stages of this. And like I said before, I think cameras are a great option, but there's definite things with cameras where they will struggle in certain conditions, and also they struggle with they're not as accurate at depth perception because there's no kind of read back from them. And that's something. One of the reasons I can tell you that Microsoft were very excited about getting involved in this as well is because they've been working with cameras, and that was one of the things that they were finding, and they felt that this could really help their camera project as almost like a backup for that, to give them that exact reading. But as I say, I think we should back all the horses, and depending upon where we are in, for example, a year, then let's see where we are then, and what the best technologies are out there. But we certainly at Seadrill think this has got great potential.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Richard. Yeah, keep the questions going. Richard will, in the background, continue to answer the questions.